In StarMazer, during the SHMUP sections, we have an object called the director, which sends random groups of enemies at the player. We author these groups by using the pattern editor, so we can specify how we want the director to send challenges at the player. You can edit patterns by going to the Mazer Maker, Windows, Pattern Editor, and it'll bring up this large editor. I'm going to go ahead and dock this right up along here, but I want a little bit more space to view what's going on. So every window has an options button over to the right side. You can go ahead and hit the maximize button so it'll fill up your entire view. Now already we have a pattern loaded by default. If I hit this play button, I can go ahead and preview it and see the pattern in action. When we watch this, we can see that there's a SHMUP area here, which indicates the area that the player can actually see. So these are the screen boundaries, with the bottom being the boundary of the UI. We can use this to correctly position enemies into the SHMUP area so we can see when they'll enter and when they'll leave the screen. Now we have a couple of different sections to the pattern editor. We have a header here at top, we have the actual world space where we preview things, and then we have a footer here at the bottom. We're going to start off with the footer. We can see that we have a unique identifier for this pattern, and we have a name for it, which I can go ahead and change. It'll automatically format the name to be correctly snake-cased. I can use this menu to the right to select any of the patterns that we've already created, and selecting one will load it up instantly in the pattern editor, which I can also preview to see how it works. The button next to that is the Save button, which will save any of the changes that we've made to our current pattern. We have a Copy button here, which will duplicate this pattern and give it a new name so that we can go ahead and make small adjustments to a pattern that already exists. We can add a new pattern with this button, and we can delete the current pattern with this. I'm going to go ahead and add a new pattern. It gives us a pattern with a default name. I'm going to name this something a little more appropriate for us. So we use the header to add objects into the pattern. By default we have this small sleeper enemy selected, but if I want to change which enemy I'm going to spawn in, I can just double click and I'll be able to select any of the SHMUP objects in the game. I'm going to go ahead and select this enemy object, and to bring it on I just simply click and drag it into the scene. It places the object in the view where we can see where it will spawn and the path it will travel. If I go and hit play, we'll already get a preview of this. So this up top here is the timeline, which not only does allow me to preview what the pattern will look like in real time, but I can also scrub through it by dragging along this slider, so I can see at every moment exactly where that object is going to be. Finally, we have a trash can here, so if you have an object that you no longer want in your pattern, you can drag it up to the trash can and it will remove it. So let's go ahead and customize a pattern here. I'm going to drag in a couple of enemies. And we have some options for this. The dim version of the enemy is its actual starting spawn point. That's where the enemy will be created as soon as this pattern is started. The green line is the spline or path that it's going to travel along over the course of this pattern. I can adjust the timing of this with these two values here. The first one is how long it takes to get to the end of the spline, and this is in seconds. Currently it's set to 1, but I'm going to adjust this so this top one takes 2 seconds, so we can see it conversely with this one on the bottom. When I play them out, this one at top takes twice as long to get to the end. The bottom one is a delay, and this is also in seconds. So if I give this bottom one a delay of 1, it will take 1 second before it starts moving. So now they'll reach their endpoint at the exact same time. Now we can also go ahead and edit this spline itself. If you click one of the larger control points, you'll be able to edit that and move the point to any point in space. A control point is a point where the object will actually pass through. But every control point has handles. So these handles can be adjusted to adjust the curve that we're going to experience over the course of this object's lifetime in the pattern. Furthermore, control points, you have the ability to add new ones if it's the last one on the line. And if you have more than 2 control points, you can use an X button to go ahead and delete that control point. Here I'm going to add another control point to add some more detailed movement. Now we can see this control point has 2 different handles, and this can adjust how the object approaches that point. Currently we're in the handles free mode, which allows us to make unique adjustments for each of the handles. You can see this results in some pretty unique behavior. Now if I double click a control point, I will change what type of handles we have. Currently we have aligned handles, which are always going to be directly opposite each other, but I can adjust the length of the handle, which adjusts how the object enters that point. If you make it really tight, they'll slow down and stop at that point, whereas you make it really loose, they'll smoothly go through it. We can also grab this point and pull it in, and we'll see that they slowly launch out of that point. Finally, we also have a mirrored option, which will make the two handles exactly proportionate, so that you'll always have a smooth entry into that point. When editing a spline, you can use the first control point to not only set where the spline starts, but you can also save this spline or load up other splines. For example, if I use this menu right here, I can select from a bunch of splines that have already been created in the game. But if we go back to our default one, we can save this specific spline. I can do that by hitting the plus button. It'll ask me if I want to create this spline as a new template. And when I do, it'll give me a default name. I'll go ahead and create a name for this. After I've done that, that's already saved and updated. So I can go into here and I can select that spline so that they have the exact same spline movements. After you've edited the spline to your liking, you can go ahead and save it by hitting the save button. And I'll save this spline. You'll also be able to see it in a selection of different splines. Each spline is organized by the types of enemies it is. So this spline has sweeper enemies, so it's in the sweeper list. This spline has a bulker enemy. If we add another type of enemy to this, such as a bulker, and we go ahead and save this spline, we'll see that it appears both in the bulker and the sweeper lists.